China is about to celebrate its 75th anniversary, and our guest today is going to celebrate his 25th anniversary. Welcome to The Bridge. My name is Jason. I'm originally from sunny California, now living in beautiful Beijing. Our guest today, Mario Cavolo, is host of CounterPoint China and is a non-resident senior fellow at think tank, the Center for China and Globalization. He has now been living in China for 25 years, as he told me the other day, and he's lived in different cities across China. His opinions and articles have been published by Hong Kong Commercial Daily, Bloomberg TV Hong Kong, and others. In 2018, Mario published his second book about China entitled The Dragon Roars On, and in 2021, his third book entitled Something's Not Right Here, Folks. Welcome back to The Bridge, Mario Cavolo.
I can't thank you enough for inviting me back on the show, Jason. You have been doing fantastic work since I last was on. I've seen many of your interviews, including, of course, with Jeffrey Sachs. You're doing great work. How's life in Beijing?
You know, it's busy. It's difficult. Even on my days off, I find that I'm working. Even on my vacations, I find that I'm working. Sometimes I'm working in bed when I wake up, and I'm working in bed when I go to sleep. But, you know, the payoff is that I get to participate in a conversation that you're also a part of, where we expats, us Americans, and people from other countries here living in China get to help tell the real story of what China is actually like in reality.
Jason, I tried to get out. They keep pulling me back in. This is the story, right? Al Pacino and The Godfather. Yeah. So I want to tell you, I feel this way because I don't know about you, but I like Jerry Gray, another one of our dear friends. He didn't come to China thinking that he was going to become this big voice to talk about China. Not just because it's important, right? Because you and I, it's important. China is it's really important, but because we genuinely care. We got pulled into this. We unexpectedly got pulled into this. So I made that joke about Al Pacino. He tried to get out of the family business. They keep pulling me back in. I mean, this was a classic thing. And this is how I feel. I love it. And I appreciate it. And I know you do too. Because the messages about China are so important. And today we're not talking about any of the geopolitical conflicts and challenges. We're talking about strictly the positive messages. Now, the frustrating part about those positive messages is that they're very, very true, accurate, and real. But a lot of people are trying to tell the world they're not true, accurate, and real. And this is where you and me and folks like Jerry and Fernando and many others, Andy down in Shanghai, where we step in and say, no, excuse me, wait a minute. Okay. Hi, Jason. How you doing? Listen, that thing that you just said about China. Excuse me. Where do you live, Jason? Yeah. You live in the United States. Yeah, Jason, I live in China, and I've lived in China for 25 years. And Jason, in that 25 years, I've been exposed to everything from the local street life. I've seen the worst crap there could be in China, all the way on up to being invited to speak at government 5-star conferences. And everything in between, I've seen and heard and done it all personally. And I've been here for 25 years. And along the way, I married a Chinese girl, and I got a Chinese mother-in-law who doesn't speak a wink of English, Jason. Right? So I got a local Chinese family in my local neighborhood, all my local neighbors. Everybody's Chinese, Jason. And I've been here 25 years. So if I shared my thoughts with you about China, you think maybe, just maybe, you should believe what I have to say. Right? I mean, this is the problem. And people turn around and they don't understand and they don't appreciate and they don't respect the idea. Excuse me. You're talking to people. You, me, the other guys I mentioned, our dear friends, right? And many other people that we know. We know what we're talking about. We're here living it, experiencing it on the ground with our feet, with our eyes, with our hearts and minds. So when we say X isn't true, hey, ladies and gentlemen watching this interview, it isn't true. If we say it isn't true, you can trust and believe us because we're the ones who are here. We're the ones on the ground. And to some degree, we had to become a bit of warriors about this, right? We had to become a bit passionate about it, and we all have. because there's a lot of bad information out there about China, and we need to blunt that, and we need to overcome that. I've got nothing but amazing stories, and in fact, one just popped into my head, and I'll stop here though, and I'll make sure I remember to tell you this one amazing thing that I've experienced in China. Okay, continue. I'll let you jump in.
I'm sure it's more than one, so there's that. On your point of coming to China, I also didn't come to China to defend China. That was not even in my thinking. That didn't exist as an idea. No, but then you get here and you're doing your job, and then you go on the internet and read what's in U.S. news, and you're like, but that's not true. What? Yeah, so it's like, okay, now I have a moral responsibility to tell people how it really is, and now here we are. Okay, anyways, I wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you just said the key thing. I really do want people to understand what you just said, and it reflects exactly my thought, which is just the only reason that I feel compelled to be happy to be in these interviews and write articles for China Daily and anything else that I do is because I feel compelled by the moral responsibility to do so. There isn't any other reason. No, please continue. Same as you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I do think that because we're Americans. I love America. You love America. We're patriots in whatever way that we feel that each American feels their patriotism in a different way. I want Americans to know what China is really like, and when I see all of these disinformation, misinformation, poor ideas, poorly constructed ways of analyzing China, it's just very frustrating. Okay, but I do want to ask you, well, why don't we, before I ask you my first question, what is your grand story you wanted to, before you forget it?
Yeah, this is an amazing one because it came up yesterday again. You and I, by the way, you've been here well over 10 years, yes?
12 years, yeah.
12 years, so you've been here a long time as well, between the two of us, 37 years. We all have heard the stories, and in fact, one of the original great books about China, Tim Clissold, My China, about all those stories of companies and people who've come here and lost money, didn't get paid, lost money, got ripped off, oh, those Chinese will cheat you and everything else. And all those stories, we've heard lots of those stories, right? Oh, the companies get ripped off, and the only reason China's done well is because they've stolen everything and stole all that, blah, blah, and on and on and on. And then I meet guys and they tell me about how they did this and did that. No, I never got paid and this and that. I don't know. I must be anointed by Buddha, Confucius, and Jesus all at the same time, because I swear to you, Jason, it's the truth. In my 25 years here in China, I went back and figured this out about 10 years ago, and ever since then it hasn't changed. No one, for all the things I've ever done, whether it was corporate training, private one-on-one executive coaching, media in advertising and movies, production, food business, music and events. That covers the scope of the variety of things that myself, and then along with my wife, has been involved in where money would exchange hands. In 25 years, do you know how much money people owe me? No one owes me any money. I've never been ripped off. 25 years. I hear people say to me, oh, so and so and so and so and so and so, and they owe me $50,000, and I lost $500,000, and they opened a restaurant, and they lost money, and I'm like, wow, those things never happened to me. So I'm very incredibly fortunate that those things never happened to me, and nobody owes me any money. It's like, no, there's nobody for me to complain about. Some Chinese guy ripped me off, and nope, nobody owes me 1 RMB. Of all the people over the years that I've dealt with, I don't think that speaks to my acumen as a business person. I don't mean it in that sense. I've dealt with people along the way. 100% of the Chinese, Shanghai people. Oh, you get people, they get the thing about a reputation about Shanghainese, right? And I go, yeah, well, oh no, I've had lots of Shanghainese partners and clients, and what about them? I mean, what? I mean, I don't have any Shanghai person owing me any money. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, so there's these kind of biases and prejudices that people come up with, but that's my story. Nobody owes me a dime after 25 years of being here. I've done very, very well. And I think that's really interesting.
You know, before we get to, I think we should do this at the end of the show, before we just trading banter, I do want to bring up the fact that the 75th anniversary of China is coming up. And I invited you on the show because you've lived here so very long. You know, there's very few expats who've lived here as long as you. I can count the ones I know on one hand. So I wanted to ask you, when your 25 years of living in China, how was China 25 years ago, and how is it now, and what has changed? What have you watched change? How has it evolved?
So to answer that question, we'll go ahead and extend our interview time to 7.5 hours. So let's start with, we want to start with the key things, okay? What I experienced was exactly the same as every foreigner and Chinese person's point of view. So whether you're an expat foreigner here who happen to be living in China for the last 20 years, or whether you're Chinese citizens who most likely you're here for the past 20 years, right? You're a Chinese citizen. In both cases, Jason, no one knew what was coming. None of us saw this. What has occurred boggles my mind, and I was on it. Like I was on the case. Like it's like I was Sherlock Holmes. I wrote 3 books on China, which means I've been observing and researching enough to write 3 books worth of pages, which means I've been observing all along the way. Now, local Chinese people haven't been observing as much as me because they're busy they're just like local Chinese people. They're living their local life, taking care of mom and dad. They have their business, their career. They go home, they go to work, they go back home, they have dinner with the family, and then they go back to work the next day. They're not doing a whole bunch of research. Guys like us showed up, and we were doing a bunch of research for the last 25 years. It was part of our being here, was like, wow, look at all the stuff that China, and we, even though we were on the case, our finger on the pulse of what's happening here in China, we were also blindsided and had no clue that anything like this would occur. It's been beyond description, right? I mean, when and for me, the story goes back to 1999. I arrived in Chengdu unexpectedly. Why? Because a gentleman from Chongqing and Chengdu in Sichuan, the 2 major cities there, was a Chongqing guy in Los Angeles, and still a dear friend to this day. And he invited me to China, and I went, okay, I'll come with you to China. Sure, why not? Right? And that was it, right? I mean, it could have been Japan, it could have been Thailand, I didn't care. And when we were on the plane, he said to me, everything you think you know about China, everything you think you've heard, he says, just forget it all. None of it's true. And this was in 1999. And I arrived in Chengdu and Chongqing in 1999. Now, I want you and all of the listeners to understand that back in 1999, the China that became and transformed into today's China had not yet begun. The change, the horse out the gate, right? The horse out the gate, the train out the railroad station had begun in 2000. In 1999, when I showed up, the last half, it was October 99. I said, this is my 25th year next month. It's my 25th year anniversary. It was the middle of October, around the 14th, 15th of October when I first came. And literally nothing had begun. Now, Deng Xiaoping's reforms, which began in the 80s and were through the 90s, they had begun, but that all built the foundation for what happened next, but all that was happening in manufacturing. So it wasn't happening in society. So in other words, when I showed up in Chengdu local society in 1999 was the same as far as I know, I'm going to say, was the same as it was in 1992 or 88. You see, the city hadn't been rebuilt. Chongqing hadn't been, there was no rebuilding, there was no revitalization, there was no plans. There was a, what do you call the Holiday Inn? There was one Holiday Inn Crown Plaza in downtown Chengdu, and there was one Marriott in downtown Chongqing, and those were the only two international hotel brands. And not one person in that hotel spoke English except the general manager, who was a foreigner that they brought in because it was an international hotel brand, right? I mean, so that's how un-international it was. It was just still local China and hadn't yet changed. I would go in Chengdu. I was taking classes. I was doing, Motorola picked me up to do some business communication skills training in Chengdu. That's one of the reasons I ended up staying. But that didn't happen until after I arrived. Otherwise, I maybe just would have gone back to America and not come back. So Motorola picked me up to do some business skills training for their people, because they were the big company back then. Motorola. People don't understand. I mean, that the king, and the cats join the conversation. The kings of China, the foreign kings of China in 1999, 2000 were Volkswagen, Siemens, Motorola, and Nokia. Where are they now? Volkswagen's in big trouble, unfortunately, as of recently, right, because of the Chinese EV market. Motorola, Nokia, Siemens is doing okay, but not top visibility anymore. And we don't have to talk about what happened to Motorola and Nokia, right? So that was China when I arrived in 1999. There was literally nothing new going on. Only the manufacturing side had been built out under Deng's reforms post-Cultural Revolution, 80s through the 90s. But all of that was happening. None of that was societal. What you and I've experienced, what I've experienced since the year 2000, was the societal transformation where, oh, wait a minute, in the city of Chengdu now, there's all the international brand hotels are there. The entire city was revitalized. The new economy of China began, and the Xingchun started being built, the new part of the cities, the new, like Pudong in Shanghai and Hunan here in Shenyang. So there's the old part of the city and then the new part of the city. None of that was happening when I arrived in 1999. So this is what I want everyone to understand. And then it started happening, but none of us knew what it was. Jason, none of us knew what it was going to become. None of us knew what it was. It wasn't some grand plan. It just somehow evolved. And yes, China joining WTO in 2000, which I was a part of that big event out in Chengdu when China joined the WTO. I was cooperating with the U.S. consulate in Chengdu, which is now unfortunately closed. They asked me to give some speeches as part of the events welcoming China into the WTO, these kind of things. So I was drawn into this. And if you said to me when I was living back in America a year earlier, this is what you'd be doing a year later, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Speaking at an event in Chengdu with the U.S. consulate, welcoming China into the WTO. I was like, what are you talking about? This is not my life, right? Whose life are you discussing? And yet there I was doing that. So yes, joining WTO was the trigger. But then the rest, as we all know, the period of what happened from 2000 to 2005, that was the first period. And then there was 2005 to 2010. Then there was 2010 to 15. And then I'd say there was 15 to the pandemic, and then from the pandemic till now. We could talk about it in those segments.
Well, I mean, I guess my question really, I think many people who understand China understand that it is very well developed. I guess my question really is, how do Chinese people feel that you've met, that you've encountered over these 25 years about what is transforming, what's going on? How do they feel about the country? How do they feel about their own nation?
I'm going to talk about that from the point of view of two different Chinese citizens. Because there's two Chinese citizens. And by the way, this is true in Germany and America and Italy and everywhere. You've got the people who benefited greatly, which are upper middle class and became wealthy. But then you've got people who also absolutely definitely benefited, but their life is still pretty tough. And they're middle class. And they're lower middle class. They benefited as well. But those are two completely different experiences, Okay, so you say to me, so let's start with the people who benefited, but whose life is still tough. Now, I could tell you about that very well because I live in China, meaning I live in real China. I live in a second-tier city in China. I don't live in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, where apartment values are 60,000 or more per square meter. Minimum, right? I live in Shenyang, which is more the same as Chengdu, Chongqing, Dalian, Qingdao, Changsha, I don't want to say Tianjin, Ningbo, Kunshan, a lot, and I could go on and on and on. There's like another 50 second-tier cities where apartment prices here are still, how do I say? By local salary standards, expensive but reasonable. 10,000, 8,000 RMB a square meter, to 10 to 15,000 RMB a square meter, to 20 to 30,000 RMB a square meter at the top end, right? So
I'm going to pause you because I think you've gotten you're too Chinese now.
Yeah,
how do for our American listeners who think of a home as one cost, how does that correlate?
Right. I told you it's a 7.5 hour interview, right? So from the point of view of the local Chinese, okay, a local Chinese, there's two Chinese who are looking at this situation of a home, like homes here in Shenyang. Let's just go with 10,000 per square meter as an average. So that's friends back in America, that's $150 a square foot for a home, okay? For your American calculators, right? So if you're talking about a 2,000 square foot home in America with a little yard and a garage, that's a 2,000 square foot home, and that would be $300,000. Okay, by American standards, that's pretty average low, right? Because the average in America now, in fact, of what I just said, is 500,000. Okay, so 300,000, 200,000, 250,000 would be what we call reasonable, but even if you're talking about a $250,000 home back in America, Jason, if you're an average middle-class family, that's still tough, right? That's what I mean. You're still going to have a $1,000 mortgage, and that's my point. So we go downstairs, and there's a shuchang that opened up in our building right
community.
Down. There's a shuchang. I'll translate. Thank you for reminding me. I'm speaking Chinese. Nobody knows. There's a shuchang downstairs that just opened up in our building downstairs. Now, a shuchang is like a farmer's market grocery store, and it's a really big one, and it's a very popular local brand. My wife and I and everyone in the building is thrilled to death that on the first floor of our building, we now have a gigantic grocery store, farmer's market. I mean, literally, we just go down the elevator and around the corner and out the gate, and we're in the grocery store.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Nice. Good for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic. Okay, but the story to answer your question, the people working in that local shuchang and the people working in all the local Wallace, Holaishi, local chicken shack store like McDonald's, China's version of McDonald's, the workers, all those folks that are the employees. This is what you're asking me. Mario, what do they think about today's China compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago? And my answer to you is, it's amazing, Jason. Their salaries are 4 times higher than they were before. You got to be kidding me, Mario. No, I'm not. The people, the guy, the butcher in the shuchang downstairs, meaning they were hiring the butcher to be the beef butcher in the beef shop of the beef department or the pork department. Those guys, the salaries, there's a big board downstairs showing the salaries in public, like, right? 8,000 to 10,000 RMB a month for the butchers. Now those are. I'm
surprised. I've never seen people's salaries posted in public here in Beijing.
They're posted all over the place. Here in Shenyang, McDonald's has a poster hiring, and the managers are making 6,000 to 8,000, 9,000 RMB a month, and the workers are making 5, 6, 5, 4, no less than 4. Now you ask me this question: because back in 1999, 2000, 2005, salaries in Shenyang and other second-tier cities, when I say Shenyang, it's the same as Chengdu, Chongqing, Changsha, Dalian, Qingdao, all the second-tier cities. Salaries back then were 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And now they're 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. So you say to me, now you get, so you tell me, so then you tell me the answer to the question. If that's true, Mario, how do the local people feel about the new development of China over the last 15 years? Well, I'd say they're pretty damn happy. I'll tell you why. Because mom and dad, the grandmas and the grandpas, they can't believe that their child is earning 4, 5, 6,000 RMB a month. Because 10 years ago, they were only earning 1,000 or 2,000 a month. So that's how much the society has come up. But there's a key question, and that is, but how is that relative to the cost of living? And as you know, Jason, here in China, we have not had the inflation. We've had some inflation, but especially since the pandemic, prices here in China have remained flat. And the West wants you to think that that's even deflation and it's bad. It means China's economy is bad. No, excuse me, okay? I like my rent not going up. Right? No, I don't have rent. Yeah. I'm saying, right? We like rent not going up. We like our restaurant prices being the same as they were 3 years ago. I went back to America in July to see my mom and my brother. We hadn't been back in 4 years, okay? And I met a buddy of mine, another friend of mine who left China and is living in San Diego, and he's very, very Chinese wife, and he's very successful. And he said, Mario, we don't go out to eat anymore. And he's got a lot of money. He's living in $1 million condo. And he's like, we don't go out to eat anymore. Restaurant prices went up by 50, 100%. You can't, sit down in a restaurant, $25 for some kind of a meal. Here in China, here in real China, I should say, right? No. So what I've done here is I've attempted to answer your question by painting this picture. Right? You've got local workers who are now making 3 to 5 times more in salary. There's been low inflation over the same 10 to 15 year period, but there has been inflation. And so for them, they're like, yeah, I definitely have a better life. And it's amazing that we have bicycles down on the streets that we can rent for 2 RMB, for 20. You can rent a bicycle for 30 cents, unlock your bicycle with your mobile phone, right? And go for 30 cents. That's amazing. And subways for 30 cents and 50 cents and no more than $1. No, my gosh, here in Shenyang, I think the max you would typically pay for a subway is like 4 RMB. So what's that? 63 cents? I mean, and we're talking brand new modern subways all over the city, right? So how do local people feel about that? Well, it's the best life they've ever had. It's the best life they've ever had, but it's still a tough life. You're still paying the bills every month. That's not easy to be in that kind of a situation, but that's true in every country.
I want to follow this up with just quoting some basic statistics that you and I both know very well. There was a Harvard longitudinal study that showed that people in China liked the central government, 95.5%. This was 2019, 2020. And then there have been studies by Latana that show it's about 89%. So when we post this data online, a lot of people say, oh, that's not true. People are forced to say that they like China's central government. So I want to ask you, based on your own experience of actually talking to real Chinese people every day, all day, having a Chinese family, do people like how the government has done over the last 25 years? Are people satisfied?
There's no question that they're satisfied. I mean, after what I just explained to you, how could they not be? Thanks to my government, I have 8 subway lines that will get me anywhere in the city for 62 cents, and bikes all over the streets, and low prices, and reasonable rents, and opportunities, and higher salaries and wages than ever before. My life is still a struggle, and I think the government should do more. They always think the government should do more, But what's to complain about? No. Now, the one area where they do complain, and this is really funny because it's not justified. And I had this conversation many years ago. I went into the hospital with pneumonia many years ago. This has nothing to do with the pandemic. This was 2 years before the pandemic. I just happened to get a really nasty cough, and then I went, and it wouldn't go away. And I went in, and the doctor said, come on, you need to get a CT scan. And she said, yeah, it's a little bit down in, a little pneumonia, it's down in your lungs. So, you got to do the antibiotics, this and that. So it was a very serious conversation. I'm there, and the hospital is very crowded. This is a crazy Chinese public hospital, which I can do because I can speak enough Chinese to deal with all that. If you're a foreigner and you can't speak Chinese, you have to go to the international department. You can't do that, right? But I can do it. I can go in there, and I know that it's crowded, and there's lines and stuff, right? But still, I'm in and out of there in like 2.5 hours. And I'd gotten an X-ray, and I'd gotten a CT scan, and I'd gotten the results. And I take the results, and I go back to the doctor, and I shimmy to the front of the line. Because if you've already gotten your test results, you go back to the front of the line and say, and you wave your paper, and the doctor knows that means, you already stood in the line, you already saw the doctor, you already went and got your test results, which is typically your CT scan and your blood work. And now you're bringing back to give the doctor a minute. The doctor will quickly look at the test results to confirm what you discussed. And then I walk in, and so they let you go to the front of the line. The doctor says, yep, confirmed. Your blood test shows, yep, you got this pneumonia, your CT scan, yep. And then they'll write the prescription. This is the medicine, write the prescription, and off you go. That's how it works in China.
Well, before you finish your story, how many thousands of dollars did that cost you?
Yeah, you asked the question because you know darn well that it didn't, right? That cost nothing. Yeah, that cost $87.22, including the CT scan or whatever it cost. Yeah, the CT scan is $50, and then the medicine is $10, and whatever. The blood work can get expensive too, and that might also be. I've had blood work where it goes up to like $100 or $150, but that's for like 5 pages of blood work. You can't believe it. It would be thousands of dollars back in America, right?
Yeah.
Finishing the story is the fact that I would go back to the doctor and say, yep, here's my blood work, here's my CT scan, and the doctor would sit with me real quick, 2 minutes, confirm to send me away. And this time period was like I said, a total of 2-3 hours at the most, right? And everything is done. I don't have to make an appointment to go back later or nothing. I go to the hospital, I wait maybe 30, 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. If it's crazy crowded, an hour, and I see a doctor, right? And then I do the tests, go out, get the test done, wait for the test results another hour because they take a while, and then go back to see the doctor. And I had this conversation about the service with the doctor, and the doctor could speak a little bit of English, and the doctor said to me, because I'm praising the doctor. I'm saying to the doctor, I've got pneumonia. That's scary, right? And I came here to the hospital. And thank you so much. I'm already done, and I'm out the door to get my medicine, and I just came here 2.5 hours ago. And the doctor says, you think it's amazing service? And I'm like, it's fantastic. It's so efficient. And he said to me, all those Chinese patients out there. He said to me, oh no, all those Chinese patients out there, all they do is complain. They complain about how bad the service is in the hospitals. And I'm like, what? And so that's like culture, right? How could I, I'm the foreigner in the foreign land, imagine me going out into the hallway, right? And there's all these Chinese people. I have this thing in my imagination, Jason. I would go out into the hallway and, bang on a chair, 朋友们, and all the people in the big hall waiting, right? 朋友们, 我是马先生, 我是马大哥, 我是您的朋友, 我跟你说, 这里的服务非常快, 非常好. So what I just said in Chinese was, oh, hey, everybody. Hey, I'm Mr. Ma. I'm your local neighbor here. I'm telling you, the service in this hospital is so good and so fast. Stop complaining. They would all be looking at me like, what's that crazy foreigner talking about? The service here is terrible, right? Why? What's he talking about? From their point of view, right? Because they don't know any different. If it's 2.5 hours, 2 hours, they want it to be. Grandma needs and wants it to be an hour.
Now. Yeah.
An hour. Right. If it's 2 hours, they're always bitching, pissing, and moaning. It should be an hour. How long do I have to wait for my blood test? Oh, till 3:30. I don't have till 3:30. And they're complaining. And they don't understand that the service and the care is fantastic. So, more educated and intelligent Chinese who've learned about the world, sure, man, by comparison, they understand how good they have it now living here in China. And all this talk about, Chinese who, they loved the West. They named America Meiguo, beautiful country, for good reason. And they always admired it deeply and want to go there for all the good reasons and all the right reasons. But now a lot of them are like, oh no, here in China, life is fantastic. It's much even better than it is back in America, without all the problems that American society is having. And we're not talking politics. We're talking about what's happening in people's daily lives, in their households, in this society on a daily basis. It means going to work, dealing with what you need to buy, where you live, your kids got to go to school, the health care that you need. This is daily life in the real society. And this is what has just skyrocketed improvement-wise, even though there's still a long way to go in a lot of ways,
Well, I want to talk about, switch gears a little bit, because China has had and has a new anti-poverty campaign. It was lifting people out of absolute poverty, and now they're moving towards this common prosperity goal, 2035. And people online are desperate. People who do not like China are desperate to find pictures of homeless people and show them off and say, look, China has homeless people. And I will be the first to admit there are very few, but there are homeless people. Very hard to find, but they do exist. You can find pictures of them, but nothing like where it was, 10 years ago. There were more homeless people. It's true. And when I go to the countryside 10 years ago, I saw extreme poverty. Now I go to the countryside, I see poverty, but I see more people doing much better than I've ever seen here in China. And, but I wanted to ask you about this, without, I don't want to bias you too much by giving my speech, I guess. But what is your experience of seeing homeless people, or seeing people who are beggars, or seeing people who are in obvious need of calories and so forth, versus 25 years ago and today?
Well, I know it well because I live local. And I often get in my car and go out to the local Nongchun and Shaochun, the local villages and the local farm country. We have friends who live in Shanghai, and their mom and dad live out in the country farm in Kangping, an hour and a half north of here. And we've gone out and stayed out there, slept on their kang in their country farm. On kang is the Dongbei giant bed where in the wintertime the coal that you use is the piping.
It goes under the house.
The piping runs under the bed platform is half of the room, and the piping runs through the kitchen. The coal is used both to heat the house, heat the pipes, and cook the food in the giant wok. So it's all it's this integrated system. So when anytime you're heating up coal, and you're also cooking the food with the heated up coal, and the heated coal is heating up the pipes, and the pipes are running under the bed. So this is how, when it's 25 below zero out in the countryside, you're sleeping on a warm, cozy kang, what they call a kang, K-A-N-G. Absolutely. And we spent nights out there. So I know exactly what I'm talking about, what it is to be literally sitting around for 2, 3, 4 days at a time, hanging out with local country people, drinking 2 RMB, which is 30-cent bottles of beer all day long, and then barbecuing and cooking up noodles and vegetables. And I mean, that's the lowest end of life that you could have, right? There's nothing else. Noodles, vegetables, some meat from the pig, which 6 months ago was the pig that you're looking at back there, which is now still alive because it was the pig they slaughtered, and ducks and goose and dogs running around and all, I mean, the whole thing. Goats, I was hanging around with these people, and then I go to the local Shaochuan villages, where they have all the homes in the villages, and there's like a little enclave, right? In English we would say, in American English, an enclave. You go to like this village on the little hillside. It looks very romantic from a distance, and you say, oh, you want to live in this idyllic Italian village. But when you get up close, it's just a working village. People are working their butts off, right? So they don't have a lot of income, but they're not poor. This is the only way I can describe it. There's a big difference between living in a tenement in Chicago surrounded by, tattooed, gun-armed drug dealers and being scared your kid's going to get killed on the way home from school. That's poor. That's poverty in America. Poverty in China is what I just described. It's sitting around drinking 2 R&B beers. You're walking your home with your pipes running and the coal heating your home in the winter. It's kind of rough camp. It's halfway between having a home and camping. But you don't lack for food. You're living you never lack for food. And even if I said to you, Jason, Jason, we're so poor out in the countryside. We only make $165 a month. And so then right away a Westerner, you and me and any other Westerner who's never been here would say, well, obviously you're in poverty. No, because like on a daily basis, food costs $2, right? So how can you say to me, I'm in poverty? If I make $165, I have no rent, right? I don't have a car expense. The local clinic is free health care for the farmers, for all the farmer families. And not a 1 pound bag of Barilla noodles, but a sack of noodles this big, wrapped in a string, potato noodles, tudo piar, right? That whole thing costs 50 cents. And the corn costs basically nothing because you're growing it and you have more of it than you know what to do with. And the same with the vegetables, right? So your food costs almost nothing when you live out in the countryside. So so wait a minute. So you're telling me that I only make $165 a month, and therefore, yeah, that's proof that I'm miserable and in poverty and homeless, but I don't have any expenses. So my net is $165 a month. Because oh, wait a minute, my mobile phone costs 50 RMB a month. And and you go through it from $1,000 a month and you go, wait a minute. So my actual expenses are actually only $100 a month. I really, truly don't have any expenses. If I offered you a deal back in America, let's say you're going to get a job at Walmart, you wouldn't be so happy. But if I said to you, no, I'm going to give you a job at Walmart, but next door we have a dormitory, you got a place to live, we're going to give you a bed, and your health care is included, and you're going to get 3 square meals a day. And if you live next door, I don't need my car anymore. So you get rid of your car payment, which is $300 a month, and your insurance and all. All of a sudden you go, wait a minute, that's a good deal. Well, you're only at minimum wage. No, but I don't have any expenses. This is what foreigners don't understand about China. It's a completely different thing. And this is the story with poverty alleviation in the countryside. It's that if you can bring someone's income up from $100 a month to $500 a month, but there's no expenses there, then that person now has a tremendously successful life. And I went and I shot a couple of documentaries about this. The main one that I'm thinking about was the Liubao Tea Village, where the local municipal government has the obligation in a project to get together with the tea companies and figure out how to help the local farmers increase the tea yields. The people who were only making $1,000 a month were set up as independent contractors, paid X per basket to go out and make. They were hired as independent contractors to become tea leaf pickers and gatherers and distributors, like Uber drivers, right? So that they could make money as independent contractors. And then the guy that I was talking to and out in the tea field, and he says to me, yeah, he says, what? He says, 5 years ago, I didn't have a job. He says, now I have like my own independent business, and the harder I work, the more I make. And he says, and I make as much as he said to me, 5,000-6,000 RMB a month, which is $700-800 a month. But he still has the same expenses that he has before, which is to say he didn't have any expenses. So now here's a guy who's socking away $300-400 a month extra every month. And I asked him what and why. And I asked him what and I asked him why. And it was like, to put my kids in a better college. That's it. So this is poverty in China. It's not poverty. It's not poverty. It's not homelessness. The homelessness, the kind of homelessness that we're talking about back in America, that's so tiny here, thankfully.
Well, I mean, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, there's quite an echo. I'll speak quieter. I hear my own voice, but I'll try to speak softer. I'd just like to... Okay. Since China has a goal of common prosperity by 2035 and a 2049 goal as well that I'm less clear about, what do you think are the next steps? What needs to be done to help China develop in your assessment, through your eyes?
Thanks for asking me this, because you're making me remember something important to talk about. There's a fundamental difference between the priorities of the Chinese government and the way that they govern their set of priorities, which is set out in their series of 5-year plans, which is now their 14th 5-year plan, plus their initiatives, a lot of other initiatives. There's a fundamental difference between the Chinese governance values and priorities. It's all laid out crystal clear at the National People's Congresses and Western government. Specifically, my comparison is with the United States. Okay, Chinese government has decided that they need to lift up the low end of the country before they let the rich get richer. Okay, the United States government, by its policies, Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, it's become a corporate. It's not become capitalism in America now is corporatism. It's capitalism, but it's not individual people anymore. It's corporatism, and it's also Wall Street. So it's corporatism by the banks and corporatism by the corporate. It's capitalism by the banks and corporations, okay? And specifically within a couple of industries in particular, which would be healthcare and financial. That's kind of the core foundation, and tech as well. That's the core foundation of the way that the U.S. government has prioritized the economy. Okay, we're not judging in this interview. We're just saying that's an accurate description, and that accurate description has made wealthy people filthy, rich, wealthier than they ever were, even though they were already wealthy. They were, you're a billionaire worth $5 billion, and now you're a billionaire worth $20 billion. We could talk about how wrong that is, but again, we're not here to have that conversation, right? Because at the same time, the low end of the market in America has been declining. The people have been, the last 25, 28 years, flatter salaries with rising costs, and they're struggling more and more. In China, it's the flip, okay? The Chinese government said, no, Jack Ma, we're not going to let you financialize Alibaba and do this financial banking thing that you wanted to do. No, Jack Ma, it's a great idea. And if you were in Wall Street and you were an American in New York, yeah, great, they'd let you do it. We're not going to let you do it because it doesn't benefit the society. And it's more than that. But it's just a matter of pointing out the priorities. The Chinese government's policies say our priority is the broad society. We need to get the people that are making we need to get the people who are at $150 a month level up to the $500 a month level. That's our priority. And that includes, to some degree, about 50% urbanizing those people, right? We got to get them out of the Nongchuan and into urban communities to some degree. Not completely, because you can't abandon agriculture, right? China's agriculture is the breadbasket of the country and the breadbasket of the world in a lot of ways as well. So you can't eliminate agriculture. So out in the Nongchuan, out in the agriculture industrial community, they modernize it and industrialize it, and that's amazing with Huawei digitizing it. Actually, no time to talk about the details, but they've made it where farmers have all the farmers together in the community in an area, all have the information together in their farmers apps about all their crops and their land and everything, and it's all no longer just manual. It's not all about manual labor anymore. It's about all the information about all their farms and their cooperation together, and yields and harvests and time and dates, and just everything is now in an app in their phones. So that how can you explain this to people? This is crazy, right? But what is the end result is increases in productivity and efficiency. That's China's deflation. China's deflating because the cost of doing things is not going up, while the production and efficiency of doing things for the same cost is skyrocketing. So you have agriculture is becoming so much better. The farmer that was doing this and this and this and making this much is doing so much more and doing it so much more efficiently, and used to have to spend 8 of his hours a week. Now he only has to spend 15 minutes a day in his phone, and he has all the information at his fingertips, and he goes and he learns how to do that because the local municipal government teaches them how, and they're the ones who roll out the app program for the farmers. The local government. Oh, government doing its job, making the farmers' lives better, improving and upgrading the agricultural industry for the local farmers, and saying, we're rolling out an app to manage your business, and you're going to come and take this 6-week course. And this is the government providing all of this to the farmers for their capitalist business to make more money, you see. So the governments are very involved. In fact, yes, hold on. Yep. I'm so glad I got up and found this on the bookshelf right behind me. This is China extending the story of this story, which is the international bestseller, The Miracle, the epic story of Asia's quest for wealth by Michael Schumann. Here it is. Okay? I'm sorry if it's backwards, folks, but this is the book. And this is about what happened 3-4 decades earlier throughout Southeast Asia, where it was Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and what was going on? How did this Asian miracle, this is a great book by Michael Schumann. He's become a bit anti-China more recently, unfortunately, but still, this is a fantastic book. And China was the last of the Asian tigers, that's the story, who raised up their economies back during this period of time. I think it's 60s, 70s, 80s. And it was the Asian miracle, the rise of the Asian tigers. And what was it? It was what I just described. It was the government subsidies, government involvement in the public, in capitalism. So the government was making things happen. The government was responsible. The government was rolling out programs which were supporting capitalism, supporting individualism, supporting the market, And then, of course, back in America and Europe, they would complain, say, oh, the government shouldn't be getting involved. Well, no, this was the greatest miracle of Asia, and this is what Michael Schumann talks about in this book. And then China was the last one to come along, and then Deng Xiaoping, what the rest of the rest is history is, I guess, the way I could end this little part of what I'm saying. The rest is history. China went on to become the ultimate, unprecedented example. They've become, by the government, doing its job, by governance, by the government supporting to build up the society from the low side first, not we're going to make the wealthy wealthier first. No, you're already wealthy enough. We're gonna build up the low side. Our concern is the safety, stability, harmony, and raising up of 1 billion darn people. This is our responsibility as the government. This is our priority. This is what we're doing. And this is what they've done. And this is the result. Here we are. China's now where it's at. And that's a whole nother conversation. Right.
We don't have very much time. For the radio, they might have to cut something, but I do have to ask one more question. Hey, I've got 2 cats as well. So I have one more question. Oh, I have one more question. I did, yes. That's fine. I have 2 cats as well, and they're also just do whatever they want. This is try to keep this brief if you can. What would you like people in the West to know about China that you think they don't know? And as briefly as you can.
China is now the largest, safe, stable, successful, capable, civil, and peaceful country on the planet. They're the first they're the first country to become a global superpower in the history of the world. That's in 7 centuries, without going to war, attacking and murdering and slaughtering millions of civilians of other nations. China hasn't done that. That's what the European countries did. That's what the European descendants to America did as they become superpowers. And China's the first country, the third, to become a global superpower in peace. And that's just the most incredible thing to me. It really is. It's the most incredible thing to me. As an extension of that, to make sure we don't start talking about politics, to just take it back and say, well, why? So what is the Chinese government busy doing? They're just busy governing their own country. They don't want to prioritize as a matter of governance, they don't want to prioritize coercing, sanctioning, threatening other countries who don't want to do things the way China wants to do them. China wants to just go to the African continent, go to the South American continent, go to the Latin American countries, go to the global South, 120 countries they're cooperating with, and say, let's make a deal. Let's do a deal. We've successfully taken our country from here to here. And now we've built out this infrastructure projects and economic model to make it happen, and we've perfected it. So what we just did to raise up our own country from here to here, we now know what we're doing. We have this model, this economic model. It starts with big infrastructure projects like ports, education, roads, healthcare, bridges, subway systems, bus systems, electric buses from BYD. We've done this in our own country. We've modernized it and turned it into the new economic global superpower of the world. Because politically, China's not a superpower. It doesn't want to be a superpower, thank God. No one wants the world to be run in Mandarin. That would be so annoying, right? So and China doesn't want it to be. But it's economically, though, it is. And so China's saying to all these other countries, now we can take what we've done and we can do it with you in your country. We start with the big infrastructure, the education system, the schools, the hospitals, the roads, etc., the bridges, the subways, the ports, and then we keep building up. And that's what they're doing now on all the other continents. It's just the government doing its job. It's just the government doing what it's doing, which is governing. It's the government's responsibility is to govern for the best of the whole society. the safety and stability of every household in the family, in the country. So, and their policies reflect that. And our life here, my life here, what I'm living, seeing on a daily basis, that's what it is. And the government, and we're not involved in politics in this country, are we? The government doesn't want us involved in politics. The government's job is to do its job so that you can go about living your life and pursuing your life, liberty, and happiness as much as you possibly could. My wife, she's got a wonderful career at a maternity hospital, or she also registered a business if she wants to, or she wants to open a restaurant, or she wants to just get a job. A Chinese person can pursue their life however they see fit, with complete amount of freedom, same as the West. That's a bunch of baloney. There's no freedom here. It's ridiculous, right? And the government's job is to provide them with the structure and the society within which they can reasonably pursue those things and do those things. And that's what the Chinese government does. There's no melodrama. There's no craziness. And you know what I mean, like it's happening in the West. It's just the government doing its job of governance. And overall, they've done fantastic, even though certainly not perfect.
That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your time, Mario Cavolo. People who want to find more from Mario Cavolo can Google him at CounterPoint China. Find him on YouTube. Find him on X. Any other platforms that they should be aware of? Your Substack. What's that?
Subscribe to my CounterPoint China newsletter on Substack. Follow me on Twitter, and every few weeks you'll find one of my articles in Chinese national media, in China Daily, or one of the other Chinese publications. And that's about it. And really, my life is just amazing here, living in Northeast China. It's basically stay healthy, stay happy, stay blessed, take care of my family, which is my wife, my son, my mother-in-law, taking care of them. That's the main thing. And I just bought an upright bass because I play jazz piano, Jason, and I just bought, it's been my dream to also learn upright bass, and I just bought one, and I'm learning that, and that's my life.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Jason.